Hello, welcome to Straight Talk Africa, live from the Voice of America studios here in Washington. It's Wednesday, November 9th. I am Shaka Ssali. Today, we'll discuss the significance of the world's 7 billion population growth and its implications for Africa. A new UN report says the world's population reached 7 billion people on October 31st. The report views the milestone as a sign of people living longer and impoverished birth survival rates. Experts say the UN report displays the disparities between countries. An author of the study says many low-income countries of sub-Saharan Africa are seeing a growth in population that is outpacing economic growth rates. Africa's growth rate is expected to triple to over 3.5 billion people by the start of the next century. As population grows, resources become fewer and climate change strains the world's food supplies. A recent report highlights solutions from some unexpected places. Although sub-Saharan Africa harbors the most of the world's hungriest countries, a Washington-based environment group, World Watch Institute, says the continent is also a home to a wealth of ideas that can help the world fight hunger, poverty, and overpopulation. VOA's Steve Baragona has more on this story.
Here, in one of the largest slums of Africa, Danielle Nierenberg says there's something surprising and hopeful.
We've met with some great women farmers who are doing this really innovative way of growing food so that they don't have to buy anything from the market.
These urban farmers in Nairobi are growing vegetables just outside their doorsteps, using nothing more complicated than old sacks filled with soil. What they don't eat, they sell, and use the revenue to put their children through school. Back in Washington, World Watch researcher Nierenberg says it's not what she expected from a neighborhood plagued by poverty.
It's a slum, it's depressing, it's crowded, it's dirty, it's noisy, but these people are finding ways to make their lives better.
With half the world's population living in and around cities, experts are increasingly looking to these kinds of ideas to feed malnourished city dwellers, not just in Africa, but around the world. Nierenberg saw many innovations in agriculture during a year-long tour of 25 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. What she learned is at the heart of a new World Watch report.
I think there are a lot of lessons that we in the Western world can learn from farmers in Africa, and what they're doing is certainly applicable to other developing countries.
In a world with nearly 1 billion hungry people, Nierenberg says these lessons can serve as a roadmap for global investment in agriculture. For example, in Nigeria, village processing centers are helping farmers reduce their losses and earn more income by processing cassava, a root vegetable, into staple foods. Developing world farmers often lose 25 to 40% of their harvests to improper handling, spoilage, and pests before it ever reaches the market. That aggravates hunger and pushes up prices. The report highlights how more attention can be paid to preserving harvests.
Given all that we invest in producing food in the first place, we need to devote the same amount of attention to making sure that it's not wasted.
Daniel Gustafon heads the Washington, D.C. office of the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. He says programs for developing world farmers are often driven by outside interests. And that, he says, brings up another point.
How important it is for researchers and donors and governments to pay attention to farmers and what they know and what they're trying out.
With hunger and conflict dominating Western news from Africa, Danielle Nierenberg says her year-long excursion was different than she expected.
I went to Africa with very little hope in my heart, and that was so surprised by everything I saw. So I do see hope in all of the innovations that we saw on the ground.
But she says farmers in the developing world need more backing from donors and their own governments to make these innovations work. Steve Baragona, VOA News, Washington.